Mission Breakout is the most controversial ride retheme ever in park history. Who would literally take a 30-year classic attraction and completely remake it? For me, it is the equivalent of turning It's a Small World into a Star Wars themed boat ride. For those who do not know, there are two versions of the Tower of Terror. The original being in Disney World and another constructed in 2002 for Disney's California Adventures. However, due to budget considerations, the DCA Tower lacked the fifth dimension scene. Instead, the entire show takes place in the singular drop shaft. Some argue that Mission Breakout better utilizes this layout. Before I forget, this is our guest, Mickey in minutes.
Hey, yeah, what's going on, Tony? It's great to be on your channel again. Like you said, I'm Nick. I host the Mickey in Minutes podcast. I do a weekly live show on Instagram called Mim Mondays, where I talk about the latest Disney news stories with you guys. And of course, that gets posted on the podcast feed on Tuesdays. And I also do a monthly podcast about, well, anything else that I find interesting about Disney parks. I've been doing this show for a really long time, and I just love talking about Disney, so I'm stoked to be talking about Guardians of the Galaxy with you, Tony.
That is so awesome. All right, so to get back into Mission Breakout, I am curious, but what was your initial reaction to the sudden retheming announcement?
My initial reaction, I remember when they announced this, the first thing I thought was, thank goodness it's California and not Florida, and I hope it doesn't happen in Florida. And so far, it hasn't happened in Florida. Yep, cheering for that one. But once I found out that it was Joe Rohde leading the team for Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, I immediately had my nerves calmed because I trust Joe Rohde. You know, he's a legendary Imagineer. He worked on Animal Kingdom, Alani in Hawaii, and a bunch of other things as well. So I knew that it would be in good hands with Joe Rohde.
That was such a huge relief to hear. Even though I personally dislike seeing a Tower of Terror attraction get rethemed due to my love of the facade, I was very pleased by how Joe Rohde utilized the one shaft ride system by putting in screens and actually expanded the drop sequence from 4 drop sequences to 6 drop sequences, all with a different song and animations as you're dropping and launching. That is one of the best aspects of Mission Breakout, and that is where Mission Breakout shines in comparison to the Tower. When I found out about the retheme, I was downright shocked. I literally could not believe that an entire California themed hotel in the state of California was getting rethemed with a Marvel IP. Something about the original Tower of Terror really did contrast with the skyline, and it just fit the Disneyland vibe.
Yeah, it was a rough one. So, you know, I do agree. The original Tower of Terror over at DCA, well, their original Tower of Terror before it was changed to Guardians. It was, you know, it was different from Florida's. It had its own unique look, but it definitely had that old Hollywood feel to it, and I think it really helped the skyline, especially, you know, when they started doing the rethemes over at DCA. The front of the park was getting the whole retheme to be more like the Hollywood that Walt enjoyed when he first moved there. And seeing the Tower of Terror at the end of the street, especially leading up to it in the red car trolley, it was such a sight, and it was such a beauty to the skyline. So it really was a shame to see that skyline, that tower, go away.
Definitely was. And what I found really shameful is that the sheer structure and magnitude really did honor Walt's legacy of having a grand hotel. And I just really thought that DCA was a very appropriate park at the time of its construction for California, since it honored the state of California, Walt Disney himself, and by removing that hotel, that red trolley for Avengers Campus, you really lose that sense of connection to Walt, and you just really lose the spirit, in my opinion, of the whole DCA vibe, and because of all the retheming, it no longer feels like a cohesive park or a place that Walt Disney would enjoy growing up, in my opinion.
It does. So the Guardians of the Galaxy retheme in California, it opened on May 27th, 2017, only 22 days after the release of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And you can kind of see why they decided to go with this. I mean, personally, I love Tower of Terror, and I know a lot of people did, but they had this Marvel franchise that was hugely successful, and they wanted to inject it in the parks. And in fact, this was the first Disney attraction in the United States based on Marvel Comics characters. So they wanted to just inject some new blood into this park. And that was it actually opened before Avengers Campus opened. And it kind of led to that Avengers Campus overlay, which again, I know is also kind of controversial. A lot of people really miss Bugs Land, but I personally like Avengers Campus because I'm a big Marvel guy. I like Spider-Man, and I'm looking forward to the new stuff coming, the new Avengers attraction and the Tony Stark Flight Lab attraction. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. So this attraction overlay was actually very, very good. You could argue about the front of the facade, whether or not it looks cool or not. I think it looks pretty cool. It's the collector's fortress. Personally, I think it looks a little busy on the front. There's a lot of like pipes and colors and stuff on it, but it really kind of fits that Marvel. It really kind of fits that Marvel vibe, And in fact, you could even see it in one of the Marvel movies, Thor Ragnarok. You can see it in the background of one of the shots, and it makes it all come together. It makes it feel cohesive in the Marvel storyline. And actually, when they went ahead and built Avengers Campus next to / around it, they had to make the Tower of Terror, or the Guardians of the Galaxy attraction, fit in. And of course, it's not part of the campus. So what they ended up doing was surrounding it on the floor with a layer of markings on the ground that imply kind of a cosmic energy. It's kind of like a green goo almost all over the floor around it, which shows that the fortress was transported somehow across time and space and landed right next to Avengers Campus. And I think that's, when they had to shoehorn an attraction in that wasn't originally there, I think they did the best with what they could, and they tied the storylines together. And yes, we lost Tower of Terror. Yes, we lost a red car trolley, but I think they're doing a good job of making that backside of the park with Avengers Campus feel more cohesive now. What do you think?
For me personally, I find the Mission Breakout Fortress thingy brilliantly tied in with Avengers Campus. I just really love the story of the idea of the really greedy collector from the Guardian series, literally taking his fortress from outer space and landing it in the Avengers Campus, literally implying that he is ruthless and amplifying his characteristics of entitlement, meaning that he is okay literally taking over an entire theme park attraction and morphing it into his fortress. But what I find really wild of Vin is that the collector traveled ahead in time. He saw the Tower of Terror and he immediately took it over due to his egotism, and he wanted a way to show off his collection. So that's my theory of how the tower became the fortress. And what I find really impressive, if this theory is true, is the idea of converting an entire Disney attraction, making it about yourself, and then making it an intergalactic spacecraft, which is next level imagineering from the collector. That's my theory.
That's pretty funny. That's a funny theory. And actually, to kind of back up that theory a little bit, I love in the attraction when you get to the top. I mean, there's several different ride sequences, so the dialogue is different each time. But if you're lucky enough, you can hear one of the ride sequences where Rocket breaks the fourth wall and addresses the fact that Disneyland is outside the window. And I always think that's really hilarious. I actually did an episode of Mickey and Minutes a few seasons ago talking about attractions that break the fourth wall. And that one always cracks me up where Rocket's like, Disneyland.
And what I find really amusing is that that line alone implies that the collector literally teleported across space-time just to be in Disneyland, since the collector knows that Disneyland attracts the high volume of guests and he wants to show off his fortress. Plus, what better way to be able to time travel in the future, figure out Disney's plans to create an entire Avengers campus where all the Avengers are, only to sneak up behind Disney, take over one of the attractions, remove it from the park, time travel, turn it into a fortress, then come back and crash land it where it was supposed to be. Now you have yourself an iconic attraction, and even though the facade in my eyes is very hideous, but yet it's very memorable. That is exactly what the collector would want, is for people to run their mouths about his fortress, especially since he literally took over such an iconic attraction. That is such a collector's move.
It totally is, and that really is the story of the attraction, is that we're invited in there to see his collection. And that's how the Guardians got tricked into getting captured, is that they decided to go in and see the collection as well. And then, of course, the story is that we got to help Rocket save Peter Quill and the rest of the Guardians of the Galaxy. And we were talking about the facade of the attraction, and it's kind of grown on me over the years. I know it's not Tower of Terror, but in my brain, the one true only Tower of Terror is the one in Florida. So that's the most beautiful one. But I actually have an attraction poster of Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout in my house. I took it off my wall just to show you, Tony. So check this out.
Whoa, that is actually a very gorgeous poster. And you know what I really love about the Mission Breakout facade is how it glows and glimmers at night.
Yeah, the lighting package on it is beautiful. It looks so cool. So really, we were talking about the sight lines and everything being changed and kind of losing the old Hollywood vibe. I actually really like the Marvel skyline that we have built back there with that and some of the other attractions back there. I know a lot of people don't dig the way that Avengers Campus looks. They say, it kind of looks like a shopping mall. I always think that the Spider-Man building looks like an old Circuit City building, but I've come to really like the Mission Breakout building.
For me personally, it does remind me of an oil rig. And what's really funny? I know I'm really getting into a really deep theory right now, is if the collector somehow figured out about the Avatar lands and plans. Because I know that that Disney is planning on retheming the old Hollywood area in the Pandora, and yet Pandora is a land about peace and prosperity. If the collector was able to time travel, he would know that his entire fortress would easily loom over and consume Pandora, and by doing so, he knows that he could easily leave an impression on Pandora due to the height of his building alone. And within Pandora, it is usually frowned upon about seeing earthly spaceships. And especially if you do watch Avatar, there is a lot of discussion about how humans and their spacecraft destroy Pandora, but yet, if the collector thought about his plan, he comes across as very bold, knowing that his spacecraft building will be very visible in Pandora, just to spark even more controversy and outrage around the Navi.
Yeah, I like this web that you're weaving here, Tony, of the collector having this master plan to kind of take over Disney California Adventure. And I wonder if the collector has anything to do with the fact that this Avatar project seemingly was pushed back an entire year. It was recently announced, that the Monsters Inc. closure that was supposed to happen now in 2026 is being pushed back at least another year. And, if you subscribe to the rumor is that the Avatar experience has been completely scrapped in favor of a new Zootopia themed land. So personally, I would like that better. I love Zootopia. I think that would be really, really awesome for DCA, more so than Avatar. I like the
Yes.
Avatar land a lot of Animal Kingdom, but I'm not a huge Avatar movie fan. So I don't know, Tony. Maybe the collector has sabotaged that.
Yes, all my theory is, I know I'm just spreading into a really big web of fictional theories, is that the Navi got wind that the collector would be present, and therefore, because of the Navi's code of ethics, they were like, nope, Zootopia, you can have at it. We do not want to establish a settlement or part of or extend our road into a place that's going to be reminiscent of what happened on our planet. And unfortunately, because of the collector's choices and decisions, he will have to live with the consequence of not being by the proximity or power of Navi, especially the shaman. Instead, the collector will have to reconcile that he will basically have to take over Zootopia instead.
I think bringing this back into reality here, it's kind of funny since Joe Rody obviously was the Imagineer behind Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. He was also the Imagineer behind the Avatar land in Florida, and we were rumored to be getting a Zootopia land at Animal Kingdom, and supposedly Joe Rody was the Imagineer who said no, who said we can't do Zootopia over an Animal Kingdom because it's too cartoony and the fake animals don't belong with the real animals and the conservation theme and all that stuff. And then to think that we could be getting a Zootopia land instead of an Avatar land in DCA is just kind of, the irony is definitely there as far as Joe Rody's fingerprints on all of these things.
Yes, I can definitely see a Zootopia Metropolis literally fitting way better with the Collector's Fortress than the Avatar land. And you know what's really wild to think about it is the fact that Zootopia is basically a cartoonified version of Hollywood land. But yet the Collector's Fortress will remain looming over the Zootopia universe, which gives me a very strong impression that the Collector can transverse through the cartoon verse, the multiverse, and can literally dominate any world that it sees fit.
Things are getting crazy here, Tony.
I know. I think we did answer this question before, but as a Marvel and Disney fan, did you find the initial retheming controversial or more exciting?
I think it was initially controversial to think that losing a Tower of Terror was something on the table. And if they can get rid of it in one park, who's to say that they wouldn't get rid of it in another park? But I do feel like Joe Rody ended up doing a really great job. So, in my opinion, the controversy surrounding Guardians of the Galaxy taking over Tower of Terror has really gone down. I don't feel like there's a lot of people who still complain about that necessarily anymore. Honestly, Guardians of the Galaxy is such a great ride. It's so fun, it's so dynamic, and they changed it. There was only so much they could do with the ride system that they had there. So I love how Joe Rody and other Imagineers have spoken about the fact that in order to change the Tower of Terror fear aspect of falling into something more aligned with the fun, whimsical aspect of the Guardians, they were able to use the same ride system and just change the way that it works. So in Tower of Terror, you fall, you plummet, and it's terrifying. But in Guardians of the Galaxy, you kind of bounce. You get this feeling of weightlessness.
Aww.
And that paired with the music, there's, 6 different songs that you can get. Hit Me With Your Best Shot, Give Up the Funk, Born to Be Wild, I Want You Back, Free Ride, Burn in Love, right? There's so much variety in the show scenes as well that it's a completely different feeling that you almost forget that it was ever a Tower of Terror. And I think they did such a good job that I don't think it's controversial anymore. Now, what would be controversial would be getting rid of the real tower, the original tower at Hollywood Studios. That would be a big, big no-no. And actually, last time you and I talked on your channel, we talked about possible rethemes for Florida. What I said on that episode, go watch that episode, guys. It was really good. What I said on that episode, I still agree with. I think that one day in Florida, they're going to stop the Twilight Zone theming, and they're going to use some more original IP in that attraction in the Tower of Terror in Florida, keeping it Tower of Terror and maybe changing the storyline slightly to be something original. But I don't think that we're getting rid of the Tower of Terror in Florida. It's the icon of Hollywood studios now.
It is. It's like the second Cinderella's castle. The
Oh
second
yeah,
castle.
I agree. It's an amazing icon for that park. I mean, that park has struggled with getting an icon for a long time, and I think the Tower of Terror is it. So I don't think they'll ever touch that facade. I don't think they're going to change, how that ride is, besides getting rid of the Twilight Zone theming. From what I understand, that's kind of one thing they did want to get away from in California Adventure. They wanted something a little bit more modern, a little bit more hip. I mean, the Twilight Zone is a very, very old franchise that, a lot of kids today don't really know about, but everyone knows Marvel and everyone knows Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, Chris Pratt, yes. So, it was just an exciting and fun franchise. And I think it was the right franchise to use in California. And they use it in Florida too for Cosmic Rewind, which is an amazing, amazing attraction. So, a lot of love for Guardians at the Disney parks.
And you know what's funny is Guardians is my favorite Marvel franchise, mostly because of the music, Groot, and the character humor. I just find it real. I'm like always worried ever since the Mission Breakout re-theme in California. I'm always worried and always on the edge of what if Disney's going to come bulldoze the Tower of Terror in Florida and completely replace it. But going off that question is, do you believe that Disney could have kept DCA Tower's exterior while retheming the interior?
I don't think that they could have made any kind of. I don't think they could have put a Guardians of the Galaxy ride in the attraction without changing the exterior. I was thinking about this. It would have to be something to do with time travel or something. And I don't think that a Guardians theme would have worked for that, but something I think could have been really cool if they wanted to keep the outside being Twilight, or if they wanted to keep the outside being the Hollywood Tower Hotel, they could have done something with Spider-Man Noir, which is a black and white version of Spider-Man who is, essentially exists in that back in time old New York Hollywood type of era. And I think a Spider-Man Noir attraction keeping a Hollywood Tower Hotel theme on the outside could have been pretty cool.
I would so love that. And for me personally, I know it's going off on a tangent, but I could personally envision the Collector's Fortress resembling an abandoned hotel or shape shifting depending on its location. Personally, the fortress's exterior does mirror a spacecraft that has freshly landed. If that is the case, how did the collector fill it with guests, the guardians themselves, and capture the entire hotel bellhop staff to serve him? I would have really loved if the facade stayed the same, doing to stay the same, but yet as guests went in, they would see a completely different lobby, and it would indicate that there was some sort of hostile takeover.
Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be crazy. But honestly, I think Guardians ended up being the right move. It was something that, everyone can agree is fun and exciting, and I think it really injected a whole new level of energy into a Disney California Adventure. I mean, it's still one of those really busy attractions. Always has really high wait times. It's the attraction that every time I'm in DCA, I rope drop. That's always my first go-to attraction at Disney California Adventure.
Yes, and And on a positive note about Mission Breakout, it really does pump up your jam. And rather than being terrified in line about dropping into the Twilight Zone, you can just feel it even from live streams and online videos of a really excited, happy, and like hyper crowd of people who just want to be there, rather than a bunch of terrified people shivering and being like, "What did we sign ourselves up for?" Instead, people are waving their arms, getting ready to party, especially when Rocky's like, everybody put your arms up, it's time to scan on in. And what I find hilarious is guest rocking is there was some guests who I saw in a video or read about on Reddit who didn't know that this was a Tower of Terror until they saw the ride cars. So they're all getting hyper ready for the party. Then kabam, they go into the elevator, and there it is, a Tower of Terror ride car. So they chicken exit.
Yeah, I really like the party aspect of it, and I love the way that they worked in the raising your hands into the storyline. Although that's how you scan in, and they tell everyone to put their hands up right away. And oftentimes on these kind of attractions, you put your hand up you put your hands up either because you're scared or because you want to feel that thrill, but in this one it's more of put your hands up because you're having a party. The song choices are really great. My favorite song to get, I think Born to Be Wild is really, really fun, and I think Free Ride is a great one. What's your favorite song to get on Guardians of the Galaxy?
Of all things, I have not ridden Guardians of the Galaxy, but I do wish that they had Disco Inferno. This way, Cosmic Rewind and Mission Breakout could share a similar song. And what I find really, and also speaking of the emotion, is there was somebody who got into the Collector's Fortress seat, strapped in, right as the elevators closed. That is when they realized that this was the former Tower of Terror, not a brand new Guardians attraction. And they were like, well, my soul left my body the moment that I realized that I was on a Tower of Terror. But it was Guardians.
Yeah, it definitely has a different vibe to it. You come off of that ride just laughing and having a great time, and honestly, it's one of my favorite attractions at DCA now.
And most people when they come off Tower of Terror, especially if you people watching the gift shop, they come out Tower of Terror like, what did we just get ourselves into?
Yeah, definitely a different vibe. But, I come off Tower of Terror laughing the same way because I love Tower of Terror. The way it makes my stomach drop is just so fun and exciting. And, nothing, not even Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout could replace the original Tower of Terror as one of the greatest attractions of all time.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. It's the best attraction on Earth. Besides, it's a small world. And if something does happen to the original tower, I would likely be very mortified, grieving, and just my heart would drop to the basement.
Yeah, if they decided to do anything major to the Tower of Terror at Hollywood Studios, I would be, completely distraught as well. I would be very, very sad. Please don't take away our Tower of Terror in Florida.
Same here. I would probably be making a bunch of videos of me crying and a whole bunch of and I'd probably be going live a lot talking about it.
You and me both.
Yeah, I'd just be really disenchanting. And honestly, when it comes to that original tower, it has become in my eyes an absolute Disney treasure, like Cinderella's Castle, Spaceship Earth, Tree of Life, It's a Small World, Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, The People Mover, Castle of Progress. It has become a Disney treasure.
I absolutely agree with you there.
Yes, it would basically be in my eyes Disney saying, "All right, this is Cinderella's castle. We are going to completely repaint the Cinderella's castle and turn it into Star Wars and Spider-Man."
Well, remember when Cinderella Castle was a birthday cake? That happened.
Yes, people.
I love that actually.
Oh my gosh, people were mortified, but
They were.
I just love the balloon look.
Yeah, I was a kid when they did the Cinderella Castle cake, and I thought it was wonderful.
I really miss the pink castle.
I love the new paint job on Cinderella's castle. I think going back to the classic colors is the way to go.
Yeah, especially because that is how Walt envisioned it. Do you have any last things you wish to say, or anything that you wish for Disney to do in the future?
So, if I was going to change anything about the way they did Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, I would have put somehow some more audio animatronics in the attraction. 'Cause I'm a big fan of audio animatronics, and I know that this worked out really well with the screens and the way that they filmed the screen, so that you are able to see all the action and have it not look fuzzy or weird from your angles in the ride vehicle. But some more audio animatronics would have been really great. I say the same thing about Cosmic Rewind is I would have loved some audio animatronics in the pre-show or the post-show there. And speaking of a post-show, I really would have liked some sort of post-show in Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout as well. Again, with some audio animatronics, I think that would have been really good. But I think they nailed the ride. I think the pace and the energy of the ride are amazing. And I think it was just such a feat of imagination and, of course, Imagineering to turn a simple drop tower attraction into a completely different attraction, basically, in Guardians of the Galaxy. So, my final thoughts are that Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout is an A plus, and a lot of other people agree with that. In fact, it earned a Thea Award for Attraction Reimagineering in 2018. That is the Themed Entertainment Association. So people agree that this was a fantastic retheme. That same year, though, Frozen Ever After at Epcot also won a similar award.
Yeah, thank you so much for opening my eyes and giving me a very fresh perspective about Mission Breakout. For the longest time, I absolutely despised Mission Breakout, especially because of the removal of the Hollywood Tower Hotel. And as we continue, and as we talked, I gained a greater appreciation and understanding for why Mission Breakout is such a wonderfully energetic and this really pleasant attraction.
I agree. It is an awesome attraction.
Thank you so much for being here today. And do you have any last closing remarks or anything before we go?
Thanks so much, Tony, for having me on your channel again. This has been a really great conversation. I love chatting about Tower of Terror with you. And everybody watching, check out Mickey in Minutes podcast. I'm on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube as well. You can check out my weekly show live on Instagram on Mondays at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. Check out the last Friday of every month, a new episode of the Mickey in Minutes podcast.
All right, thank you so much. And if you have not already, please be sure to smash the thumbs up button and subscribe to Tony Tower. Woo!